Hi there, everyone. Okay, this is the Guitar Show, and I thought we'd try this out. This is a Sunday Q&A, and sometimes we'll have a subject to debate, but this is pretty much you can ask me about anything you want, and yeah, any questions you want to ask me, you can do so, and I can tell you a little bit about what's coming up, and we can debate a few subjects. In the meantime, I'll just waffle on or play the guitar. So, first of all, just want to say thanks to everyone for making this channel really nice. It's nearly got 10,000 subscribers, which I didn't really think it would get any subscribers when I first started it. And the whole sort of point of this channel was to kind of evoke some nostalgic view of the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. And sort of just look back on that era and really try to get into that sort of era, try to get the vibe, and just explore the instruments and the sort of guitar styles and the ambience of the sort of time. So it's kind of really good fun to do this channel, and but it's also really great to interact with you guys and to find out about your your own lives, your own history. What gigs have you been to? What guitars do you like? And all that kind of stuff. I've had some amazing encounters because of this channel, so thank you very much. And also, it's been a lot of fun as well. And also, sometimes, I think there's some people think, oh, I'm posting a video to just because I want to, clickbait. Like my I hate PRS video, which was I was really shooting from the hip. I was. It was my real honest opinion about PRS guitars, and I don't hate them really in the kind of conventional sort of sense of I think they're really crap guitars. No, I think they're very well made guitars, maybe the best made guitars in America at the moment. The quality is always high, at least with the American guitars, but I just think overall with the sort of feeling I get, the tone I get from them is something else. And sometimes, just because a guitar is really well made, it may not necessarily translate into a great sounding instrument. So that's kind of really what that video was about. So if you've got any questions, now I don't know how I'm going to see here, if you've got any live chat or message of, let's try that. Top chat, some messages such as potential spam may not be visible. Okay, let's do live chat or messages are visible. So hopefully I'm going to see your questions as they come in. American viewers probably just stirring now. It's probably 6 a.m. You're just having your coffee, your croissants and your orange juice, and depending where you are. So yeah, what we could talk about is a few things. One thing I wanted to talk about is the difference between Japanese quality, which I'm a big fan of, and American quality, maybe Mexican guitars. I saw something on Facebook last week, big debate, and got pretty heated. And it was really, what is the difference between Mexican-made guitars and also Japanese. So, for example, the Mexican factories make Fender guitars, and the Japanese factories make Fender guitars. And what is the difference between those sort of two guitars? So if you've got any views on that, that'd be really cool. My own take on it is I think the Mexicans are doing a really, really good job. I mean, guitar's a big thing in Mexico. It's been around for hundreds of years. There's some great sort of mariachi bands and that sort of style. Santana has his roots in Mexico. One of my heroes, Ritchie Valens, his parents were Mexican, I guess, or his background was Mexican. Although I heard that Ritchie Valens couldn't actually speak Spanish, so his Spanish was pretty bad. So yeah, that's surprising. So let's get back to the subject. Mexican guitars are very well made. In fact, there's a guy, I think his name is Tim Lurch. Check him out on YouTube, and he just plays Telecasters, and he sort of mods them, and he's got like 10 Telecasters, and every guitar's slightly different in terms of pickups. And Tim Lurch, he's got these road-worn Mexican Telecasters, and he just makes them sound amazing. He really makes them work for himself. He does like a solo jazz thing, and he really, a lot of young and sort of older jazz players are now sort of turning to Telecasters, And certainly the if you want to get a cheap Telecaster, the sort of Mexican road worn series is meant to be amazing. I've played one and I was really blown away. So I think Mexican guitars are great. I don't think there's a thing where Japanese guitars are better than Mexican. I think they're both sort of good in their own way. The Japanese have got a legacy of just being, anything they do, like for example with camera equipment. Americans, I think, were the leaders, or the Germans were the leaders of camera equipment, right? And then Japanese took over the Germans, in lenses and things like that. They did the same in cars and did the same in guitars. They're really good at copying things, and the work ethic is fantastic, and their attention to detail is really amazing. So, I mean, that's why Japanese guitars are great. Hey, we've got Sean. He says, "Good morning. I love my Mexican Strats. People often think they're made in a sweatshop by very poor people. Ignorance is bliss to some." Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I mean I think the Mexican obviously Fender's gone down there. He's set up a factory down there. Also, another thing to bear in mind is Leo Fender. When he was, we're going to talk about Leo Fender actually in a minute, but Leo Fender, he employed mostly sort of Mexican or people of Mexican origin in his factory in Fullerton. I don't actually know the geography that well of USA, but I heard that a lot of those early guitar builders in the 50s were from Mexican descent. So, Mexicans have been building guitars, with Fender. It goes way back. So it's only natural that there's a factory in Mexico, And like I said, the Mexicans have got a great history of the guitar. I've heard from many people that whatever they kind of get into, they're really very precise, hard-working individuals. So, I think if you get a Mexican guitar, it's going to be good. It's going to be good quality. And the Japanese, they have this exceptional quality and legacy of getting things right. But on the downside, where you think about where Japan is, and I know there's a lot of good Japanese rock bands, but it's not like, how many Japanese CDs do you have in your collection, or MP3s? They're not known for, great rock and roll music. I know that they have got some great bands now, but especially in the 70s and 80s, they weren't really known as a great sort of country for rock and roll, whereas, Mexico definitely has a music thing embedded in its culture, in rock, and blues and Latin music, Japs took over the German cameras. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were just mentioning that. They could copy things and they could get it absolutely precise. And what I was going to come to actually was something that may be missing from Japanese instruments is a certain vibe. So some Japanese copies are played, some sort of Yamahas and Grecos. Sometimes they lack. It's hard. They're a little bit cold. I can't explain it. Like the lacquer is really heavy. The polyurethane lacquer they use is really thick, especially on those Yamahas. I had that Yamaha AE 2000, which was top of the range arch top, and it just had this really thick kind of almost plastic covering the whole thing, and the neck was just a really horrible shape. So it was kind of. I guess it was a good instrument for jazz if you want to sort of travel with it, because Yamahas are and Ibanez's are all quite heavy, and they're laminated. They're not solid wood like a L5, so they're good guitars to travel with. But they kind of lack a little bit of soul, and I think that's where the American guitars are going to win every time, because they've got that kind of soul, and especially American guitars from the vintage periods, 50s and 60s. You're never going to beat those instruments, because people in those days were craftsmen. So it wasn't like there was a factory. Nowadays in every country we have factory workers. I think the difference in Gibson and Epiphone and all those companies, they were craftsmen building instruments. And that's why those guitars are so good, and that's why nowadays we need a Fender custom shop and a Gibson custom shop to recreate what happened in the 50s, because like I said, it was a craft back then, and those instruments had a real vibe. So, coming back to Japanese instruments, they're obviously made in a factory, and that can, the kind of vibe can sometimes be lacking, even though they're technically perfect guitars. You know, the neck shapes sometimes are just not quite right, and things like that. I think little things where I think the Americans always, you know, just got the guitars perfect, you know, and we were all, you know, English makes and German makes, whatever, we were all sort of trying to copy what the Americans were doing, you know. I know in the 60s we had Burns guitars, you know, and they were just basically a copy of a Stratocaster. And you had Futurama, I think, which was a Czechoslovakian make, again another copy of Fender Stratocaster. So whatever Americans came up with, we'd be copying, the rest of the world would be copying, just that the Japanese copied better than anyone else. Some good quality Japanese instruments, and there's some, you know, if you, I think you, to go to Japan if you don't have enough money for an American custom shop is a really valid, you know, reason, you know. And my only complaint is that there shouldn't be a custom shop in America for Gibson or Fender, because they should all be that quality. You know, why should you have, you know, when you go into a guitar store, you say, I want a Fender Stratocaster, you know, you got a big selection there. You've got like a Korean Squire, you've got I think you've got a Vietnam, you know, who'd have thought a Vietnam Squire, whatever, I don't know where they're made, but you've got all these kind of different selection of guitars, and it's really complicated. Whereas back in the 1960s, you go into a guitar store and you'd say, I want a Fender Strat, and the shopkeeper would say, well, what colour do you want, a red one or a tobacco burst? You know, that was the only question, just what colour. And I think nowadays, you know, it's all about price, and you know, and I think if you want something quality, you know, pay the price, you know. So that's kind of be good to get your feedback on that. It's also Leo Fender's birthday. Well, it was his birthday yesterday, so we could talk about his legacy. This is a guy that was, you know, totally innovative, both on guitar amps and instruments. Hi, my brother Joe, my twin brother Joe has just tuned in. Hi Joe, how's it going? Carl, just down to Japanese production techniques, which were years ahead of American and European factories. Yeah, that's very true. The Japanese, you know, they really value, you know, when they work in a factory, it's like a really, it's a really big deal for them, and it's like a big honor. And you know, I think they have some rituals at the beginning of the day, you know. Who we got? Peter says, yay, but you have to go to try a guitar in person, as whoever makes the guitar, they will all sound different no matter how much you pay. And that's so true. You know, let me just show you a guitar. So this guitar here is kind of, I got this guitar this year. As you know, it's a Fender Telecaster, and it's made in Japan. The maker is not important, but the reason I got this one is it's a butterscotch with a white scratch plate, because my first ever guitar that I ever owned when I was 17 was a Squire, Korean Squire. I think it was 1991 when I first started playing guitar. It could be 1990, I don't know, but let me think, I can work this out. 1992, it was 1992. So I probably had a 1991, and it had a butterscotch, had a white scratch plate. And this is one of the best guitars I've ever played, even till now. So I've kind of tried to recreate that guitar with this one. This guitar here cost £3,500, but it's probably not as good as the Squire, Korean Squire that I had. So, you know, it goes to show it's not about how much an instrument costs, you know. It's about the kind of thing you learn on the instrument, you know. My brother Joe, my twin brother Joe, he's coming in. He says, if they know what they are doing, they should have consistent quality, playability and feel. Makers like Sadowski pull this off in the bass world. Yeah, so Sadowski also, you know, Sadowski's got a name in Japan as well. They're made in Japan, Sadowski. And is it Donald Fagen? Who's the guitarist out of Steely Dan? Anyway, he was a big Sadowski fan. So, you know, this is a really interesting point actually, because Sadowski, when they wanted to build cheaper versions of their guitars, they went to Japan, because Japan can have, they're super high quality. Sadowski get the Jim Hall model. I actually owned a Jim Hall Sadowski guitar for a year or two. My friend Dave Gillen lent it to me, and basically it was incredible. The quality was amazing, and that was built in Japan because I guess Sadowski in New York, they just didn't have the tools, the tooling, and the money to make a cost-effective guitar. But that was still, I think the Jim Hall models made in Japan are still £4,000 or something. £5,000 are pretty expensive. Let's have a look. Not sure about the guitar world. Perhaps they need to chant and meditate. Tuck bones. Right, Joe. I think you're. I'm not sure what you're trying to say there, Joe. But anyway, sounds interesting. So if I think there was a time the Master series, Fender in the late 80s, I think, built this type of guitar called the Master series, Fender Master series, and they were built in Japan because I think by Ibanez, the Robin Ford model, for example, and the Elite and the Esprit, Fender just didn't have the tooling and the jigs to build those guitars. They had a Fender Diquisto model, and again, just Fender didn't have the capabilities of mass producing an art stop style guitar at a cost effective price, and so they went to the Ibanez factory, and in Japan, and basically this Ibanez produced all of the Master Series guitars. Because I think the way it works in Japan is you have factories, and those factories build different makes. Like the biggest company I think in Asia is Court Guitars, and Court Guitars, they build everybody. They build Ibanez guitars. So sorry, Ibanez don't have a factory. They go to Ibanez, exist as a kind of company, but they go to a big factory. You could probably tell me the names of these factories, but one of the biggest factories out there is Court, and Court make guitars for G&L, who was Leo Fender's second sort of company after Fender. Right, what we got? Sean, have you experienced of Gordon Smith guitars? Their Strat and Teletypes look very tempting and are handcrafted for a lot less expensive than USB 2. Okay, that's a good point. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Enjoying your channel, Ramon. This is from Electric Ocean Band. That's a beautiful name. Listen to your videos and stuff on the way to gigs. Where did you find the Dumble book? Oh, where did you find the... Would like to have a read. Okay, so I'll get back to you on that. First of all, first question, Gordon Smith guitars. A good friend of mine called Ed, I played in a band with him for years. He owned a Gordon Smith guitar. It was like a Junior, Les Paul Junior, and very kind of thin, quite a thin body. Beautiful guitar, really, really nice guitar, very well made, great value for money. Not kind of like, it didn't really have a kind of Gibson vibe to it. I didn't gel with it personally, but you might do. Necks were a little bit thin for me, but a very, very well made guitar. I had a brass nut, and I know there was something strange with the electronics. The pots or something were very sort of unique, so you can't sort them out easy. I think I've got that right. But yeah, very good guitars. Very super quality. Right, what else have we got here? Les Paul oiled finish. Right, that's from Joe. First of all, let me answer Electric Ocean Band. Where are we? I've got it here somewhere. I had it here the other day. One sec. Let me just get this. Get this. Okay, if you are a guitar geek, there's two books you need. This is one of them. Beauty of the Burst. It's a total coffee table. You're never even going to read it. You'll probably buy it and then just open it a couple of times, but it's just to leave on your coffee table, and just to kind of admire these amazing guitars every now and then. So that is one book. It's called Beauty of the Burst. I'm not sponsored by them or anyone, but this is, if you're a guitar player, you need this book, and it's not expensive. I don't know how much it is. It's not expensive. Yeah, $35. There's another book which is really cool if you're like me, but I can't find it at the moment. It's called the Dumble book, And the guy that wrote it, Jesse Schwartz, is now dead. So, but I've got it here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but it's here somewhere. Anyway, that's another book. If you're into Dumbles, that's another book I recommend. Tony Bacon wrote a few good books, one for bass and one for the Fender and Gibson guitars. That's a nice, it's a small book, and it's a pretty good book. Again, a coffee sort of table book. I should review a few other books I've read. There's some other good books I've read recently. Right, so where were we? Yeah, here we go. Sorry about this. This isn't totally new for me, this whole. Yeah, so let's just talk about Leo Fender. So Leo Fender, interestingly, my brother Joe, interesting fact about Leo Fender, he had sinus problems all his life, and he managed to get rid of them, I think, whilst he was at G&L, with some really strong antibiotics that they'd sort of invented, or just not invented, but discovered. So the whole time at Fender, he suffered from blocked sinuses, which is, so he couldn't do that. And my twin brother Joe, who's actually watching, he was suffering from that. So Joe, you've got something in common with Leo Fender. I hope you've cured yours now. But yeah, so Leo Fender, he designed the Strat, the Fender guitar. I think he was influenced by Gibson and Bigsby, because obviously Bigsby designed the kind of a Stratocaster looking instrument, solid body guitar. And he basically took a lap steel, because he was making lap steels, and he took the lap steel pickup and placed it into his Telecaster. So this is something I want to explore this year, in fact, because Keith Richards, who actually I think Keith Richards is next in line for a history of guitars, but apparently Keith Richards has actually got in his bridge position the lap steel pickup, the original Leo Fender lap steel pickup, and it's kind of like a really raw sort of sound. Actually, in this guitar here, I've got a Don Mayer. I've got a Don Mayer pickup, which is kind of, I think it's pretty much a replica of that sort of lap steel thing. Highly recommend them. Very, very good tone. If you can get an original, obviously, if you can get an original lap steel, Fender lap steel, pickup. I'm not saying butcher these instruments because they're beautiful instruments, but if you can get one of them and put them in your guitar, it's a game changer. It's game over as far as any other pickup, So that's what I've heard. Right, okay. So Sean answered your question. Who we got here? Moonlight Drive. Hey, I'm doing good. How are you? Just for a bit of fun, we're doing a live stream. Moonlight Drive. I wanted to say, anybody on Instagram, go to friend Moonlight Drive, because he always puts amazing photos on his Instagram. Really enjoy them. Yeah. So where were we? We're talking about Leo Fender and Leo Fender's sort of legacy. So what's interesting is because CBS, I think there's a pre-CBS, and then there's the CBS era. But, my pleasure. And with that whole changeover, it's really interesting because you had these amazing. Yeah, hi man, Hajia, how's it going? How you doing? That whole sort of transition between pre-CBS and CBS guitars, and takeover, and Leo Fender. We're just talking about Leo Fender because it was his birthday yesterday, and what a great man. He was, my favourite instruments are Telecasters, Stratocasters. And I think, it's kind of interesting the way kind of these brands are working. But back in the day, Leo Fender just represented, real craftsmen, and we started off talking about Mexican and Japanese guitars and the quality versus each other. And he employed these great craftsmen. A lot of these craftsmen were Mexicans, and they were great luthiers and craftsmen. Yeah, good question. So what I want to make is, when Leo Fender left CBS, it was a real sort of dive, and Gibson suffered the same thing at pretty much the same time. So it's these kind of giants, Fender and Gibson. these two giants, Fender and Gibson, both kind of went in the decline at pretty much the same time, and that's kind of like, maybe it was a state of the world, what the world, the economics, whatever, what the world was going through, this kind of, I don't want to get into politics too much here, but, this whole kind of privatization or whatever the word is, this kind of capitalism where things had to be bought by bigger companies, and you had like one company owning lots of little companies, and it was all about profit. And I think that came in, especially in the 70s, it was all kind of, the record industry went that way as well, So I think, Fender and Gibson did suffer from that. Let's have a look here. Do I generally prefer Fenders over Gibsons? No, I think they're both. I think you need them both. I think you need a Fender guitar, and you need a Gibson. There was a point, like a year before last, I was just playing Telecasters, and it was all about the Telecaster for me, because Telecaster is a very unique instrument. It sounds like a banjo, just acoustically, because the way the strings go through the body, it's got kind of this banjo sort of. But when you amplify it, it doesn't sound like a banjo. It obviously sounds really cutting, and it can sound like a Les Paul. It's so versatile. So for me, if it's my desert island guitar, would have to be a Telecaster. And I first started on a Telecaster when I was 17. I started playing guitar. I started on telly. So this is kind of home base. But on the Gibsons, for me, a Gibson can make a melody sing, especially if you've got a nice overdrive, creamy sound. You'll never replicate that sound with a Strat or a Telecaster, in my opinion. If you want your guitar to sing like a violin, then a Gibson's going to do that, and Gibson can do that better than anything. So especially with overdrive, the way Gibson works with overdrive is really, really beautiful. I don't tend to use them so much for clean. So for clean, if I'm playing clean, then I'll use a Tele or I use a Strat. But for me, the Telecaster is like, if you've got a gig and you can only take one guitar, take a Telecaster. You know what I mean? Okay, Norlin era. Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes I make bolder. If you watch some of my videos, I say, Norlin is crap. But that's not true. People are using, to great effect, Norlin era guitars, and they're making some great music with them, and they really bond with the guitar. So it's just what you like. It's just what what kind of vibe you have from the guitar. Do you like it? Is it not? Is it the right way? Is it got the right sound? Can you write a song with it? Can you learn a song? That's more important than the way it looks and what it's made of. Who cares about that stuff? It's just the way your hand fits over the strings, and can you learn? Are you going to learn lots of new stuff with it? That's really the most important thing about an instrument. So Norlin guitars, technically they're not as good as 50s, no way, but they've got some vibe about them. For me, they're kind of more punky, they're more sleazy. If I was playing some real sort of punky, sort of fuzzed up, New York sort of new wave punk, whatever, I'd want a 70s heavy Les Paul Custom. I think that's a guitar you want for that music. Let's have a look here. Thanks for putting in the time it takes for your content, from Columbus, Ohio, USA. Oh, thank you very much. I love the fact that you're in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm here in London, England. Yeah, pleasure. It does take a long time. It's not. But my whole ethos with the history of the guitars for various artists like Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, is I won't do it unless I can bring something new to the table. So unless I can come with a new revelation or a new opinion, or sort of, maybe I'll read something in a book here, I'll reference it on something online there, maybe on a forum or something. So, just check it, reference it, check it that it's true. Maybe people have missed something, and that's really exciting when you can kind of come up with something new on one of those videos. That's really exciting. I did it actually with a video that nobody's watched. It's let me play you one of my favorite artists when I was young. Probably my favorite guitar player is obviously the same guy that wrote and Ritchie Valens, you know, and nobody had really sort of. I think there was an American guy actually had just written a book, and it wasn't even out, so I didn't even read it. And but there was this white guitar. It's if you Ritchie Valens, who wrote La Bamba. If you've ever watched that film, if you're like me, and you grew up in the 80s, you would have seen Louis Diamond Phillips, great actor, one of the Brat Pack actors, and he played Ritchie Valens in La Bamba, the film. But on the cover of the film, there you got Louis Diamond Phillips with this sort of white guitar, you know, and nobody knew what this white guitar was. Nobody had any idea. They thought it was a harmony. Everybody thought, oh, it must be a harmony guitar. It's cheap because Ritchie Valens didn't have any money when he was growing up, so he would have bought a harmony guitar. And the great thing doing these sort of videos is I actually really explored it and found out that it was actually a Epiphone archtop, and I've even given the model and everything. You can find all the details on the Ritchie Valens gear video. So that was kind of a personal sort of thing for me. Ritchie Valens, my hero. So it's really nice when I can, you know, do these videos, and it's exciting for me to. So check that video out. It's only had about 2,000 views, whereas I think Jimmy Page has got like, you know, 170,000 views. So obviously Ritchie Valens is he's got to catch up, you know. But yeah, so that's good fun to do these videos. Yeah. Right. Thanks for where are we here? Any chance you could do a guitar history for Pete Townsend anytime? Yeah, certainly. We're going to do I'd like to do all of the Who actually. John Entwistle as well would be really interesting, because I know Jesse from Lazy J Amps makes amplifiers for Pete Townsend, and Jesse from this Lazy J Amps, check him out. I've spoken to him a few times. I've met him in person. He's a lovely guy. He makes amazing amps. You know, so Lazy J Amps, they're made in England, but they're made by an American guy called Jesse, and you should check them out. They're definitely as good as, or if not better than, a lot of the other sort of boutique makers. I personally like Victoria amps. I'm thinking about buying his 2x10 super sort of tweed super thing. But if anybody's had any experience with Victoria amps, let me know. I've got his Reverberamo sort of vibrato unit, which is great. You know, where are we? So we've got, what's the best amp? Electric Ocean Band. Oh, sorry. So come back. Yeah, I'm going to do the Who. John Entwistle as well had an amazing collection of vintage Fender guitars. You know, not just bass guitars, but also Fender guitars. So John Entwistle was a really interesting guy. He also had an amazing bar, like a pub set up in his house. So he didn't have to go down to the local pub. He just literally go downstairs, and his living room was a pub. You know. Where are we? Best amp you've ever played? Ooh, the best amp I've ever played. At the moment, it's the Bill Crenard Filmer Sound amps that I have. I personally have them. This is actually, I've got one of these to hand. I should do a whole thing about these. So this is a Filmer Sound, and these were made in America. And then they went to Japan, so it's quite poignant that these were made in Japan. But the manufacturer of them went from America to Japan, and then Japan started building them from about the mid-60s. So this is a mid-60s Filmer Sound amp. And then I send them to a guy called Bill Crenard, who works for Two Rock, who somebody called John, guitar player by the name of John, plays some Two Rock amps, I don't know. And anyway, so you can see the valves here. That's where the valves are. I've taken them out to clean this thing, but this is actually a 240 volt model EL84, so it's a really rare model. These are my favourite amps at the moment because is that Bill who made Two Rock? Yes. Yeah, it's owned by a guy called Eli, and I've got to say I went to shop Coda Music. Coda Music is my favourite. Right, the Bass Gallery is the best shop in England. If you want to get something made or repaired, go to the Bass Gallery in Camden. But if you want to buy a guitar, my favourite shop is Coda Music. So check out Coda Music in England. Even if you're in America, they might have some cool stuff, I don't know. But Coda Music's really, really good. And I tried a new 2-rock amp in Coda Music, a custom reverb signature, and it was fantastic. The clean channel was really, really good. I tried a smaller 2-rock amp called a Burnside. Didn't like it. There's another small amp called a Telstar. Okay, that was at Coda, and my friends actually bought a Telstar amp. Car Telstar. There you go. Car Telstar slaughtered the Burnside amp. Okay, custom reverb signature is more of a Dumble thing, but it's killer. It's got some killer clean tones. Car Telstar, check that amp out if you like sort of this sort of thing, but don't want to have the hassle of trying to mod it and all that stuff. Then check out the Car Telstar. It's got an EL84 tube in the power section and a 6v6. So it's got one 6v6, one EL84, and that's a killer amp. It's got a great tone. I think it's got reverb on it. It's expensive. It looks weird, but it's an amazing tone. So if you want to buy a new amp and something a little bit different, versatile, check out that Car Amp Telstar. Okay, that's it. Yeah. Who we got here? Sean says, I was thinking the same on high watt. Those DR103s were delicious. You know, high watt, what can I say about high watt amps? I think they're English. All I know is that Dave Gilmour gets incredible tone. Dave Gilmour, I think Jesse from Lazy J makes or looks after Dave Gilmour's amps. And Dave Gilmour, you know, what a guitar sound and what a player, so precise. You know, I don't do lessons in this channel anymore. This is another thing I want to say. I'm going to start doing lessons, guitar lessons on my own channel, which is Ramon Goose, YouTube Ramon Goose. I'm going to sort of keep the lessons separate, and I will. A few people have been asking me when I do lessons. Personally, I don't think I'm good enough to do lessons, but a lot of people have been asking me, so I will do a few. One of the main things I want to concentrate on, and this is actually what I see. The reason I won't give lessons is so many people on YouTube are giving lessons. You know, it's got boring. I'm bored myself to even give. I teach guitar as well for a living, as a kind of part-time living, and so I'm bored. So when I come on YouTube, I want to do something that excites me, and that's where the guitar show is more about the nostalgia, going back into the history of the 60s and the 50s, and you know, really dissecting that sort of era. So that's what's more interesting for me than to give guitar lessons. But I will give guitar lessons on my own channel, which is YouTube Ramon Goose. If you go there, I'm going to start doing lessons there. And the one thing I'm going to teach, the first lesson everyone should learn, is rhythm guitar, right hand. The second lesson, and this is really something that's going to keep you married if you're a man, possibly if you're a woman too, is bending in tune. Because when you bend out of tune, you sound like, you know, two cats having a fight in the alleyway at midnight. It's a horrible sound. So we're going to look at bending in tune, how to bend in tune, how can you bend in tune. We're going to talk about string gauges, all that sort of stuff. That's something we will get into. But the masters of guitar for me, as well as, you know, Wes Montgomery and Django Reinhardt, the masters are the guys that can bend in tune all the time. And guys like Eric Clapton, you know, a lot of people mock Eric Clapton, but the guy can bend in tune. You know, he bends in tune. Dave Gilmour, he bends in tune. And they're the guys that, you know, people that don't like guitar, you know, don't like guitar, but people that don't play guitar, when they go to see Eric Clapton, they go to see Dave Gilmour, the reason they like those guys is because they bend in tune. It's like Stevie Ray Vaughan. You know, you don't even have to like guitar to know that Stevie Ray Vaughan is good, and he bends in tune. So Robin Ford's another guy. So the great kind of blues sort of influence players, you know, one thing they've got really nailed down is they bend in tune. You know, so that's something I want to teach. I've learned a few things over my 20 years. Yeah. Oh, what's this? Zaya says, wow, worldwide, but it's only 5 a.m. in Oklahoma City. Okay, sorry about that, but I'm glad you're up. Who bends out of tune? Jimmy Jam 74. Who bends out of tune? Who bends out of tune? That's a good question. I mean, slagging off is something I don't want to do. Rule, guys, yeah, never slag off a fellow musician. Yeah, okay, except if he's John Mayer or Joe Bonamassa, you can slag them off because it's fun. But no, even then, you shouldn't slag off a fellow musician because it's we're all a community. We all love each other. We're friends. The thing about being a musician, you can travel anywhere. I travel a lot in Africa, and if you're a musician, you don't have to speak even the same language, verbally, because you've got this language, and it's great being a musician. So we shouldn't slag each other off. But yeah, there's people that bend out of tune, for sure. Ramon, stop saying bending tune. Okay. Joe says most guitarists can't bend tune right. Well, I don't know. There's a few. Like I said, I'm going to do some lessons, and we're going to look at some concepts of, how to. If you can't bend in tune, how can you cover it up so that it sounds good? It sounds in tune. So I'm going to show you some tricks and tips, and the things I use. Sometimes if my pitch, if I haven't played guitar for a couple of months, and I've been doing other things like composing or something, and then I've got to suddenly do a blues gig, and I've got to bend in tune. There's things we can do to minimize the out of tuneness. Some tricks and stuff, and I'm going to show you them on some lessons. So head over to YouTube, and you're going to find out how to do that. What else have we got here? Sid Vicious could bend in tune, but he's still the best. He couldn't bend it. Sid Vicious, man, there's a lot you can learn about Sid Vicious. A lot of things not to do in life. But Sid Vicious had an attitude. He had a punk ethos. I'm not saying he's a great individual. Same as I wouldn't say Hitler was a great individual. But you can learn something from people who have done bad things, because you can learn not to do those things. But also, I think Sid Vicious brought a certain attitude, and that's an attitude that's sometimes required. In music, it can get too nice and too polite, and sometimes you need to go to that place just to wreck it and go crazy, and then you bring it back again. That's what I loved about Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix, when he did a concert, it was like an experiment. It wasn't formulaic, and people, I think Noel Redding in the end left because Noel Redding wanted things in order. Noel Redding saved all his money. He was a rich man when he left the Jimi Hendrix Experience. I think Mitch Mitchell was skinned because he just blew it. Mitch Mitchell was a very cool guy, and Noel Redding, I'm not slagging him off in any way, but I think Noel Redding was very, very ordered in his thinking, and a very structured individual. So when he went to the studio with Jimi Hendrix, he wanted to say, okay, Jimmy, what song are we playing? What do I need to play? What are the chords? And I think Jimi Hendrix was, he was probably on LSD or whatever, and he couldn't explain in sort of human terms what he wanted. You had to be on another plane, an astral plane, to know what Jimmy wanted on that song in terms of the bass line. And I think Noel Redding got really frustrated with that, and whereas Mitch Mitchell, he could hang with Hendrix. He was probably on the same drugs as Hendrix, so he could vibe off what Jimi Hendrix was on about, and he could hang with him. And I think Mitch Mitchell was more of a yes guy. He didn't confront Jimmy. He just sort of did what he was told. When they had the other drummer, for, the Band of Gypsies, when contractually Jimi Hendrix had to make an album, Band of Gypsies album, because he'd signed a contract that went bad years and years before, and now he was tied into a contract and he had to make an album for this. I think it was Capitol Records, and they had to release Band of Gypsies, and he formed that band especially to get out of this contract to give this Capitol Records the album they wanted. And I think he had the drummer. It was Buddy Miles and Joe. Who was a bass player? My twin brothers on here. Who was the bass player in the Band of Gypsies? Billy Cox and Buddy Miles. So Billy Cox was the bass player, right? We're going to come to Tommy Emmanuel in a minute, Fred. I promise. Sean says, a master at bending in tune was Jimi Hendrix. On some live recordings, his playing is flawless. At the end of the song, it's obvious the guitar is badly out of tune. You know what, Sean? That is a genius. That's a genius statement. A lot of people think that Jimmy was playing out of tune, but his guitar was out of tune. I never thought of that. That's a really good. That makes a lot of sense because, you know, the way he's using the whammy bar, of course, it's going to get out of tune. So when he plays it, it's, you know, and I think he's used tens out of tune to E flat. So nightmare, complete nightmare. Right. Do I know about Robbie Krieger's guitar playing, like classical and flamenco influence? You know what? I saw on your Instagram that you posted. This is Moonlight Drive. Guys, go to Moonlight Drive Instagram and like him because he always puts amazing photos. And I saw you put a photo of the Doors guitarist, Robbie Krieger. Yeah, he plays with his fingers. I think now he just plays with his fingers. And he doesn't even use a plectrum. Beautiful guitar player, amazing guitar player. Wow, and he played an SG. I love SGs, and I love people that play SGs. Oh, amazing. Yeah, he had a beautiful technique, and you're right, he was influenced by classical guitar, you know. But I don't really know that much about him. Two classical guitar players that play electric, you need to check out, and I know you know them already. Andy Summers. Andy Summers went to America, I think, to study classical guitar, and he only made it to grade 5. So he was a great player. A guy that made it to grade 8 on classical guitar was Dominic Miller, who's currently Sting's guitar player, and he's amazing. You know, check out Dominic Miller, amazing guitar player. But Andy Summers, I always say Andy Summers is the best guitarist in the world, and I don't mean that literally. I just mean kind of in a comical way. But he is kind of the best guitarist in the world. You know, he's a great guy. Right. What else have we got here? What are my thoughts on Tommy Emmanuel? Wow, Tommy Emmanuel, incredible. I mean, I can't do Tommy Emmanuel, but there's one thing I like on he does his harpharmonics, where he kind of goes, harpharmonics are these things. Where are we? Early in the morning, brain's not working. Harpharmonics, and he does this really cool thing where he kind of goes, where are we? If I do it here on the 5th fret, you'll probably see it better. So he kind of goes, that's nice. So I learned that off Tommy Emmanuel. Thank you, Tommy. Yeah, great player. I've met him. He likes wine. He drinks wine when he plays. I know that. He's great stamina. Okay, if you watch any of my lessons, I go on like a scratch record about your right hand. So Tommy Emmanuel has an amazing right hand. And that's what my playing's all about, my right hand. So yeah, he's got an incredible right hand. I don't listen to Tommy Emmanuel, but if I ever got the chance to see him perform live, I probably would, because he's just very inspiring. But I don't think it comes across on his albums. I don't think he can conceptualize that into an album. But for me, he's all about the concert. To see him how he does it, you know, he taps the guitar. He was a drummer. I love all that stuff, and he bangs the microphone with his head, and that's amazing. And he's an amazing player. He's really, really good, and he can play blues and everything. I tell you what I do. You know, the guys that do the tapping thing and that. Right, that's my pet hate. I'm not going to slag any musicians off, but I don't like that style. I would never go and watch somebody do that at a concert, and I don't want to destroy anybody that spent their lives doing that. But Tommy Emmanuel doesn't do that, and that's why I like him, because everything is here. There's no tricks. There's everything. He's really playing. Right. What else have we got here? Okay, let me just finish what my brother Joey's just said. Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. So the drummer in the band of Gypsies, I think they were all pretty high on cocaine at that time, and they really got into the drugs. And the drummer I think when they played back in the old days, the drummer, Buddy Miles, right? The drummer, I'm guessing was Buddy Miles. I think he was the boss of Jimmy. He sort of bossed Jimmy around. So fast forward when they did the band of Gypsies, I think he felt he still had that power over Jimi Hendrix. And that's kind of why Jimmy went back with Mitch Mitchell, But interestingly, Mitch Mitchell's style changed after the Band of Gypsies, because obviously Mitch Mitchell was like, "Hey man, that guy's stolen my gig," and you know, he copped a load of Buddy Miles's playing, or Billy Cox. I can't remember which one of the Band of Gypsies guys, but anyway, so it kind of had a positive effect on Mitch Mitchell. Buddy Miles, yeah, was the drummer. Yeah, okay, thank you. Do you still have a Les Paul with the Peter Green out of Phase Mod? Yes, I do, and that's gonna be coming back very, very soon. Basically, very, very soon. So Jimmy Jam, who I'm guessing you're a Hendrix fan. I'm a lefty but play right-handed. Weird, I know. So my right hand always needs more work. I have put the plectrum down and started playing with my fingers, and I think this really helps with fill technique. Okay, Jimmy, man, I love your question. Right, my favourite player, one of my favourite players. Me and my brother Joe, my twin brother, he's here now. He's online. My twin brother Joe is an amazing bass player. He is hardcore. He's like, you know, he can do anything. Jacko, Mark King, and Sid Vicious all combined. He's a man. But anyway, me and Joe, we were talking yesterday about Mark Knopfler, and we were saying, we had this theory, my brother had this theory, Joe always comes with his genius theories, that Robin Ford copied Mark Knopfler. Okay, so that's a new theory. I mean, actually, if you listen to Mystic Mile, and you listen to Robin Ford's playing on Mystic Mile, it's very similar to Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler. So I'm going to put that out there. You know, did Robin Ford copy or was influenced by Mark Knopfler? I know that John Mayer, this young dude, similar age to me actually, a bit younger. I know John Mayer has confessed to being influenced by Mark Knopfler. And so Mark Knopfler's a man. He is incredible. But the reason I'm mentioning him, because Jimmy's saying he's a lefty but playing right-handed. Well, so is Mark Knopfler. Okay, Gary Moore is as well. So when you've got the thing about Mark Knopfler's right hand is he puts his two fingers here. This is another lesson I'm going to do on my other channel, Mongoose YouTube. I'm going to show you how to play like Mark Knopfler, or at least how I play. So he's got this. He's got that thing going, and you know, all those sort of. And I think that's what, you know, when people are trying to play like Mark Knopfler, I think what they need to realise is he is a lefty playing right-handed, so it's not going to feel like a right-handed person. You know, I'm not going to discriminate against lefties here, but obviously there's something weird going on because your strong hand. This is my strong hand. I'm right-handed. I don't know if the camera's flipped, but I'm right-handed. It's my strong hand. So you know, for me, it's easy to play rhythm. But if I had to go this way, you know, if I'm playing like this, I mean, my God. I could probably play Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Let's have a look. You can see, you know, it'd be a nightmare. It'd be a total nightmare. Apparently, Hendrix could flip the guitar and play both ways, but not very well, obviously, one way. But it was better the other way. But so if you are a lefty playing right hand, you've got to make it work for yourself. You've got to think, okay, my strong hand is on the fretboard, okay? But but both Gary Moore and Mark Knopfler, they've got incredible right hands, you know. I mean, Gary Moore's right hand is insane, you know, it's just crazy. And the same with Mark Knopfler. Just, you know, what a... all those sort of licks, you know, Mark Knopfler's, you know, just got this incredible sound. And the thing about playing with your fingers, if you listen to Robin Ford and Mystic Mile, the actual song Mystic Mile, you'll hear that he's actually playing with his fingers on that song, you know, so you can get that. And, you know, playing with your fingers is something you should be able to do. I play a lot. I play 50% with my fingers, 50% with the plectrum. I do both. If my twin brother Joe is here, he's watching. Joe only plays with his fingers. He doesn't play the bass with the plectrum. Sid Vicious did. But my brother Joe plays with his fingers. It's alien for him to use a plectrum, so we don't need a plectrum. I think plectrum is kind of a weird one because it can really sound amazing. Like Django Reinhardt played with the plectrum, and all that sort of that tone, Whoop. That sort of stuff. It's amazing, and he's got that really percussive and with it, he's only got two fingers, so a lot of those lines, are sort of made for having two fingers. My favourite lick actually that I've learned recently of not Charlie Christian, of Django. So I just love that. Charlie Christian's done a nice one as well. That's a Charlie Christian, but those two guys check them out. For the right hand sort of picking thing. But yeah, if you're lefty, play with your fingers and get with that sort of Mark Knopfler. And I'll do some lessons on that on my other channel. So, thank you. Right, where are we, Joe? Jimmy, I struggle with the feel when I hold a pick, but feel more at home without one. Harder to play lead though. No, it's not. Jimmy, it's not harder to play lead because you make it work for yourself. You get your own style together. So, do you like Peter Frampton's playing? I love Peter Frampton's playing. Peter Frampton is incredible. I think if you don't like Peter Frampton, there's something wrong with you. My God, he's one of the greats. Do you feel like I do? With a talk box, and he's just one of the dudes. He's like Peter Green, Paul Kossoff, Duane Allman. He's one of them. He's one of the heroes. And he also played. It was quite funny because he played rhythm guitar on one of my favourite albums, George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. He played the rhythm guitar pretty much on the whole album. He was another guitarist on there. And I think he played on a few tracks where Eric Clapton played guitar. And he also, interestingly, Peter Frampton I think he was with David Bowie on a big tour in the 80s when he had all these dancers and crazy stuff going on. Peter Frampton was just like Bowie's session player, I think Peter Frampton's kind of career had taken a dive in the early 80s or something like that. And obviously, David Bowie was on the up, making millions and millions of pounds. And he got Frampton to play his guitar for him, because I think that was after the whole Stevie Ray Vaughan Let's Dance thing. I think that was another tour, either before or after, I can't remember. 3:30 a.m. in Los Angeles. Almost missed you. Hey, Johnny. It's amazing to have you with us. Thank you. And Johnny, yeah, greetings. Likewise. WS says, Mark Knopfler, idolizer, asked me if I thought he was the best guitarist in the world. Told him he wasn't even the best guitarist from Glasgow. Guy went apeshit. That's hilarious. No, I bet there's some amazing guitarists in Glasgow. My mum was born in Glasgow, and yeah, man. I mean, I think it's Martin Taylor. Martin Taylor, is he Scottish? I think he is. So there's some red hot guitar pickers in Glasgow and Scotland. We love Scottish guitar players, absolutely. Here we are, and he's just right. Moonlight Drive, you said Peter. Yeah, Peter Frampton, he's a lovely guy. He's an amazing guy. Electric Ocean Band, Mick Taylor on Sticky Fingers. Any thoughts from one? Mick Taylor, what a player. amazing. Oh man, the thing I love about, I've said this before. What I love about Mick Taylor, if you go and see him live, which I have had the pleasure, he'll do a lick and he'll finish it with his slide guitar. So he go a lot better than that. You know, that's what I. He played an SG with a Bixby in the Rolling Stones. We're going to do a Guitar Greats video on him pretty soon, after the Keith Richards one. I think Keith Richards is next for the Guitar Greats series. It's going to be a big one. I'm not going to do it in 2 parts. I'm just going to do one blast. So that's going to be fun. But yeah, Mick Taylor, beautiful player, just sums up British blues guitar of the 60s. You know, he kind of encapsulates everything. He stayed in that zone. He didn't veer. He didn't get psychedelic. He didn't go sort of all country, Nashville like Clapton did, and Cockney. Clapton had his Cockney period. Chaz and Dave. Anybody who's English, British knows about Chaz and Dave. Check out a Chaz and Dave song called "London Girls." It's my favourite song. It's one of my favourite songs of all time. I've been dying for Keith Richards guitar history, and Mick Taylor would be an awesome bonus. Yeah, so we're definitely going to do Mick Taylor. He encapsulates British blues, British London blues, whatever you want to call it. Mick Taylor, for me, he stayed on that path, and you know, he just had that touch of class about his playing. And it's a shame that he left the Rolling Stones, but then he got with Jack Bruce afterwards, didn't he? He played with a band with Jack Bruce, but I think Jack Bruce and Mick Taylor were both serious heroin addicts at the time, so they didn't really do much, you know, which is sad, you know. But there you go. Garba Zabo, yeah, tell me about him. I've come across his name quite a lot, and I think it's somebody I should know. I know that name. Please tell me more, Dennis. Tell me more. Angus Young is the best Scottish guitarist. Hey. You're not wrong. You know, Angus Young. Yeah, what a player. You know, and he plays SGs. Like I said, I love anyone that plays an SG guitar. The thing I love about Angus Young. I was watching an interview by him. Somebody asked him, this woman, it was like an MTV, Nirvana had just come out, and they asked Angus Young, what do you think about Kurt Cobain? What do you think about you know, his music? And Angus Young said, who's that? And she said, you know, Kurt, you know, the most famous artist in the world at the moment, Kurt Cobain. He said, no, I don't listen to that. I only listen to Chuck Berry. And maybe I listen to a bit of Jimi Hendrix and all that stuff, but mainly I just listen to Chuck Berry. That's all I listen to. I just thought that was, yeah, man, good for you, good for you. Where are we? Right, okay, Martin Knopfler was born in Glasgow, Martin Taylor, London, John Martin, London also. Okay, sorry about that. For some reason I had the, I just had the sort of assumption that Martin Taylor was Scottish. I don't know why. Maybe it's his nice red hair, his shock of red hair. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason why. But maybe he lived in Scotland. Maybe that's. But Martin Taylor, yeah, just incredible. You know, one of England's greatest guitar exponents. What have we got here? Moonlight Drive. I agree with the SG thing. It seems all the players who use SG stood out so much. Yeah, I agree. Frank Zappa, coolest guitars in the world. Yeah, they're kind of like, if you've never had an SG. Okay, one sec, guys. Let me explain this. Okay, here we go. So, Les Paul SG. Okay. Now, I played this all the time, basically, when I had this, and I didn't have DSG. I played this all the time. Why do I play this all the time now? I know, well, it's my new sort of squeeze, so I like it. But this is heavy, you know, even though it's not even £9, but it's heavy, it's fat, and it's heavy. On a gig it might be nice, but around the house, around my apartment, or if I'm putting a guitar on my back or carrying it on the train, I'm never going to take this because this is bigger, heavy, cumbersome. This is basically the same guitar. Okay, the only difference between this and this is you don't have the maple cap, obviously, but otherwise they're identical. And so its tone is slightly different, but you can get it. This is a creamier, thicker sound, and this is a more sort of hairy rock and roll sound. I'd say this is more sort of rock and roll, and this is more creamy and laid back. But you can mellow this out. You just turn the volume down and turn the tone down, and then you can get a bit of creamy, sort of more laid back tone from this. And so then you've got everything that you've got here in a thinner, lighter package. The only problem with the SG is you've got to get the right one, because a lot of SGs are neck heavy, and that's why people don't tend to like them. The second problem is with the SG is that they kind of where you have to put them over to the side a little bit, and you have to angle them up, because where the whole sort of body is, it's far forward. So once you get used to that, it only takes a couple of days, then you're laughing. Another thing is, interestingly, an SG is actually taller. It's a bigger guitar than a Les Paul. It's actually a taller guitar, which is kind of strange. Okay. Yeah, the full SG Clapton, that was amazing. That was incredible. Taylor has lived in Scotland most of his life. Well, he is a clever man, because Scotland's a beautiful place, wonderful people, amazing food, Loch Ness Monsters up there. It's fresh air. When you think of Scotland, you think of fresh air, and the people are so really friendly. And why wouldn't you want to live there? Why am I living in London? That's what I ask myself. Why am I living here? I don't know. I should move to Scotland. Maybe I will. Maybe I will move to Scotland. Okay, my twin brother's still watching. Thank you, Joe. Have you had your porridge yet? So my twin is, for those of you just, my twin brother is an amazing, incredible bass player. And Joe Goose, he plays with me in my band. But he's just said, my brother's ordered 2 bass guitars from a guy called JD. And JD Instruments are famous because they made Tony Iommi's main SG guitar. So obviously Tony Iommi is famous for SGs, but his most famous SG isn't actually a Gibson SG. It's made by JD Guitars. So JD, he's a pretty old guy. I think Joe's going to tell me how old he is, but he still sort of hand makes instruments. So Americans, if you're out there, check out JD Guitars. JAYDEE, and they make amazing, beautiful SG type guitars. There's a blue one. I want to get a blue one and a green one. And my brother Joe, he's actually promised to buy me as a present a JD SG. So Joe, can I have a green one, please? Because I don't have a green guitar, and I think I should have a green guitar. How are we doing here? Have I missed any questions out? Let's have a look. Frampton's father was Bowie's art teacher. That's a great fact. Yeah, I think I heard that. Did I hear that? I don't know, but that's an amazing fact. Thank you very much, WS. Moonlight Drive. Jack Bruce is my favourite Scottish musician. Yeah, Jack Bruce and his friend who wrote with Jack Bruce will come to me in a minute. I can't remember his name. Jack Bruce and the guy who wrote the poetry, who wrote the words. What an amazing writing team, Jack Bruce. And the funny thing is you can hear a great Jack Bruce interview where he says they were in Atlantic Studios and had come up with no, not Felix. Felix was a producer at the Atlantic studio session, and the owner, is his name Ahmed or something, of Atlantic Records. He said to Clapton, "No, you got to write all the songs. Forget Jack Bruce." And Jack Bruce was like, "But hold on, I've just come up with this." And he had to kind of fight for that song to get on the record. Pete Brown, thank you. Yeah, he wrote with Pete Brown. Yeah, so Jack Bruce, Pete Brown. Pete Brown, as far as I know, he still lives in London, and he's got his own blues band, and they gig in London a bit. So at least a few years back they did. Yeah. Who have we got else here? We got WS. My brother lived for 3 years near Inverness in an area called Black Isle, without realising his next door neighbour was Bob Dylan. So he lived. And we're going to talk about Inverness in a minute. I'll tell you something scary. Where are we? Sean says, was it JD that made Dave Hill's Super Yob and bassist for Level 42 guy John D, and the bassist for... No, John Deacon played for Queen. You're thinking of Mark King. Yeah, Joe's just... My brother Joe is just telling you, yeah. That's correct, yeah. Dave Hill had a strange guitar made by a guy who used to work out at Selmer's. I think he was actually Japanese. It was a Japanese luthier that lived in London. And the reason I know about him is he was a guy that was supposed to have flipped. This is actually a Mojo pickup. This is a replica of a guitar. I've made a video of this, if I can remember what it's about. This humbucker here has been wired in a certain way to replicate. It's been wired out of phase rather than had a magnet flip to achieve the same thing. But when you flip the magnet and when you wire it out of phase, it's a different tone. So a magnet flip is one tone. It's a little bit more harsh, which this guitar has. This guitar has a magnet flip. So it's an out of phase version of that. But this is wired out of phase. It's slightly different. And they said that the Japanese guy who wired this out of phase made a guitar for Dave Hill. Not the Super Yob, but he did make a guitar for him. It's quite a famous guitar. But anyway, this Japanese guy supposedly was a guy that fixed Peter Green's humbucker, and he didn't flip the magnet. He just rewound it, but he rewound it the wrong way. And so I'll have to do a video. I have done a video actually. You can check it out on the Guitar Show, where I've compared this method to the magnet flip. You can make up your own minds which one you think is right. So yeah, what were we talking about? We had a lot of subjects on the go. Yeah, Inverness. Let me just tell you about Scotland, Inverness. Jimmy Page has a house, or had a house in Inverness, and it was owned by Satanist Aleister Crowley. And if you go into that history, it's really interesting because Aleister Crowley apparently did the spell, and the spell took a year to complete. But if you didn't go through with the spell when you broke the spell before it was finished, then the house would be haunted forever, like really badly. And that's what Aleister Crowley did. He started this sort of ritual but never finished it. And then Jimmy Page bought this house in Inverness specifically because Aleister Crowley had owned it and done this ritual. I don't know if he still owns it now, but it's still there. And my younger brother, Sam, he visited it with some friends, and he says there were like goats' heads everywhere, and it was really spooky. So if you ever visit Inverness, take a little hike up to the house. You can see Jimmy Page's house there. Yeah, where are we? Page's house is in Loch Lomond. Okay, he doesn't own it now. Right, okay, that's the one, yeah. Okay, I was just wondering why you don't play Gibsons. You said something about it once in a video, but I can't remember. Okay. So these guitars here are made by Navigator. I can't afford... It's really funny, this. I can't afford a... it's not that I can't afford, I probably could. If I sold everything, sold my soul, I could afford a Gibson custom shop. I could find 5-8 grand by selling stuff, but I don't want to. I'd rather have like, I've got 6 Navigators. This is a Navigator. I've got 6 of these guitars. I'd rather have 6 of them than one Gibson. So these Navigators were about £1,000 each. This was more expensive. So instead of having one custom shop Les Paul, I've got 6 custom shop instruments. That's really the reason. That's the only reason. If I had, if I had the opportunity to have, just master built Fenders and master built Gibsons. I probably would have that, but I don't, so. And I don't want, just to do what I do, I need a selection of instruments. I love the SG sound. I love George Harrison, and so I wanted an SG. I love Cream. But I also wanted, the Peter Green thing and the Taylor thing. So, these Navigators are as good quality as a Gibson, but a lot cheaper. So that's the reason I went for these. Okay, where are we here? Boleskine house, it might have been knocked down by now. Yeah, that's what I heard. So it'd be a shame if that house in Inverness has been knocked down, because it's definitely a really interesting place. Okay, so this guitar here is Japanese. Japanese use a metric system. Okay, American guitars, because they're from the 50s, they use an imperial system. So everything from, I guess, the measurement of the nut. This is 43 millimeters. On a Gibson, it will be in inches. Even the size of these block markers, the binding, everything is metric. This is a metric guitar. I think I don't know if this is metric. I don't know. Be a good thing to know. But that has some effect, because they don't follow the exact specs of a Gibson. Also, the top carve is not correct. That's not a Gibson. Top carve from the 50s. So, the colours, not quite right. How do I know this? I know this because I've got this book, Beauty of the Burst, and I've actually played a few 59s and 58s on this channel. The feel, it doesn't quite feel. I've shaved off all the lac off the neck. It's down to the wood nearly here. So that gives me a bit of an oldie sort of feel to this. So these are not replicas. If you want a replica, don't go to Navigator, because they're not going to build you a replica. But what these sound. Hi Iggy. The reason I love these guitars is they sound like a 50s instrument. Why do they sound like them? Well, because they've got old Honduras mahogany. They've got hard rock Eastern maple, really hard. And that's it really. It's down to the wood. This is Honduras rosewood, this is Honduras mahogany, and this is hard maple. A lot of the Gibsons use sycamore. I don't think they use them anymore, but you can put your fingernail through a Gibson. You can't with this. This is rock solid, like the old 50s. So that's why I like the Navigators, because the wood, it's just down to the wood, and the craftsmanship is incredible. The only thing I've done, which is really stupid, is I put these Fender Elite tuners, which was a kind of a mistake now, I think, because now it's quite heavy. But it's a Robin Ford. Robin Ford had them on these Elite, so there you go. Have I ever tried an old Yamaha SG2000? I have, I think once, and I was very impressed. The thing about them though is they've got, I think the thing I heard Santana used to use them, and this is something that this guitar suffers from a little bit. Okay, Johnny, I'm going to try and speak louder. So they've got a very long neck, like an SG. And Santana stopped using them because of the tuning problems. So I'm not sure, and I think they're quite heavy. There was an era in the 70s and 80s when people wanted heavy guitars. Now we all want lightweight guitars, but in the 70s and 80s, it was all about being heavy, brass nuts. If a guitar was heavy, it was good. We forget that now. Now we're thinking, it's got to be lightweight, it's got to be chambered. But back in the 70s, people were putting brass nuts and trying to make their instrument more heavy, because the heavier the guitar, the better it's going to sound. Thanks, Iggy. You're the man. We're going to talk about PRS in a moment. So Yamaha, I haven't tried one out. I need to go back and try it. Yamahas are amazing instruments. I had a Yamaha AE2000, which I used to learn jazz. It was a little heavy, and the lacquer, I didn't like the lacquer. The lacquer was too thick, but it was an incredible instrument. You could have your whole career on one of those instruments, PRS guitars, yeah. I mean, like I said, PRS guitars are probably the best made, or some of the best made mass-produced instruments in America, they're better than Gibson. You know, you compare a PRS to a Gibson, it's obvious that PRS is made better than a Gibson. But why do I play this? This is an SG, it's a copy, but it's an SG. This is just rock and roll. It's sound, it's got a kind of thin, you know, if you're playing with a drummer and a bass player, this is going to have a voice that just cuts through. PRS doesn't have that voice, it just doesn't have it. And if you're like me, you know, when I can look at PRS and it looks beautiful, I want to eat it. I want to eat the guitar because it's flame maple, it's quilted, it's crazy. I want to eat it. I don't want to play it because it doesn't inspire me to play the guitar. You know, how can you play something like if you're playing? I'll play it on my acoustic, but if you're playing like a low down sort of. You want to play some low down dirty blues, you know, and why would you want to play that on a £5,000 or £10,000 guitar with flame maple? And I just feel weird if I was playing that kind of. The kind of John Lee Hooker style, you know. So I want a guitar that I can play that style and play jazz on, and play everything, you know. And PRS just doesn't inspire me, and that's why I hate them. But at the same time, I appreciate that, you know, Paul Reed Smith himself is a great guy. He's made an amazing contribution to the guitar world community, and his instruments are superbly made. The quality is incredible. It's amazing, and he, you know, he keeps people in work. He pays their salaries. You know, they can feed their families. So, you know, I don't want to destroy the guy. It's not my thing. It's just my opinion. Is that, you know, I don't think they don't give me. You know, if I had one, I'd never play it. You know, and for me, PRS, okay, are from the 90s. They sum up the 1990s. There was a lot of makers from this kind of boutique era of the 1990s. It kind of seeped into the noughties, the 2000s. And PRS were part of that movement. You know, they created that movement of these kind of boutique guitars that were really, you know, coffee table guitars. Even Patrick Eggle recently, he's jumped on the bandwagon. And Patrick Eggle are the kind of English version of PRS, and they did the original when PRS came out. Patrick Eggle copied them and did a kind of English version of it, and I've just noticed he's also still doing it. I don't know if he owns a company anymore, but anyway, for me that's a bygone era. You know, my friends, I've got some really cool friends that are playing. I'm not cool, but my friends are cool, and they're playing in LA. You know, I know a really great session player called Owen Barry. He's from Essex, like I'm from. Owen Barry is a super cool guy, really nice chap. He plays Telecasters. He plays Telecasters like me and Strats. He builds them himself, actually. He actually can build you a guitar. Owen Barry, check him out. And he, you know, a lot of the session guys in LA, a lot of the young dudes now are just playing Telecasters that are modded with gold foils and funky pickups. You know, that's what the young guys are playing. You know, Jackson Brown's, Mason Stoops, I think he's a player. Blake Mills, all these guys, you know, they're just playing 50s instruments. And they sort of mod them themselves, and that's what's inspiring them. And they're kind of more into weird effects and sort of tweedy amps. So I think, you know, the 90s was a PRS and a Soldano or Mesa Boogie. That was the 1990s. But nowadays, you know, with the young guys, the young dudes, they're playing Telecasters, modded tellies. You know, even Julian Lange is playing a Telecaster, you know. And they're playing old Tweed style amps and blackface amps. And that's what's hip, that's what's modern, that's where we're going, you know. Now whether the market is acknowledging that is another thing, you know. But PRS are kind of, for me, they're old hat. They're from a bygone era. You know, it's you know, it's a guitar to look at. I mean, I can understand if you want to buy it to put it on your wall just to look at it. You know, I can understand that because they are beautiful, no doubt about it. I couldn't afford to have one, you know, just to look at. You know, my guitars I've got to earn their keep. I try to be diplomatic there. The best acoustic I've ever played was a PRS, but it was £10,000. Absolutely. I love Mark Knopfler's Pentasure guitars, and he sounded great on them. Yeah, so that's all. Pentasure, another guitar like PRS, probably even better quality than PRS. And the Japanese luthier, my brother might tell me, who's still active in New York under his own name. Can't remember his name, but he was one of the luthiers at Pentasure, and I think he made Mark Knopfler's guitar. But again, for me, they're 90s. Pentasure, they're from that 90s boutique thing where it was getting crazy. These beautiful quilt tops and high spec instruments. I think in the bass guitar world it's different because you had Fondera, Ken Smith, and maybe guitars were trying to copy basses or something. Pendula, Tobias. You had all these great bass guitar makes doing Sadowski, doing super high stuff, high quality stuff, and guitars try to copy that, I think, but it didn't work out because us guitar players, we just want to play 50s, dirty 50s instruments, sleazy Norlin era Les Paul Customs, Hi Glenn, how's it going? Owen is great player. Used to play with Tim Aves. Hi, yeah, Tim Aves. I know Tim Aves on Facebook. Tim Aves is a really cool character. I like him a lot. He's really good. Yeah, Owen's a great. Owen Barry's a killer player. He's from Essex like me. I'm very proud to be from Essex. A lot of people laugh when I tell them I'm from Essex in England. Essex is kind of like, I don't know what the equivalent would be in America, but it would be maybe where the kind of country bumpkins come from. And when you say you're from Essex, it's always good for a laugh. But Essex has got a great music scene, and I used to play in blues bands back in the day, and Owen used to play, and it was nice. It was a really cool little blues scene. Dr. Feelgood. Any American guys know Wilco Johnson and Dr. Feelgood? Alison Moyet. Iron Maiden used to drink in Colchester in the pub there all the time. Iron Maiden used to hang out in Colchester. Blur, pop band called Blur. Damon Albarn, they're all from Colchester. They lied and said they were from London, but they're not. They're from Colchester. So it's got a little bit of a history, my hometown. Who we got here? Spiral Architect. I want to buy the new 64 RI reissue Gibson SG Custom Shop, but I'm worried about the tuning stability of the Maestro Vibralo. Should I be, and what's the secret to setting one up? Greetings from New Zealand. Hi, great to have a Kiwi on board. I love New Zealand. I've never been, but I just, Lord of the Rings. What can I say? Okay, tuning stability. This thing here is from 2002. It goes out of tune. It does go out of tune. That's because of the neck. I wouldn't be so worried about the Vibralo unit because bear in mind Clapton, that's what Clapton had, but I think he took off the metal face and it was just left with two things. So he did all of Cream on one of those units. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. The only thing is obviously because the strings aren't going through this block here. I know that Derek Trucks, he likes to have the stop top piece drilled right down to the body, and he says that gives him a bit of the tone. That's why his signature model has the metal frame, but it's not connected. But saying that, my favourite tones, listen to the Taxman. Is it Taxman, I think, by the Beatles, or Paperback Writer? Go on YouTube, type in Paperback Writer. That will make you want to buy a SG with a Vibralo unit, So I'm actually thinking about putting one on this guitar here. I'm not sure, so maybe I'll do it and then I'll let you know how it goes. But yeah, I think they are the coolest guitars in the world. It is an SG with a Vibralo. It just looks amazing. Okay, that looks better than any £10,000 PRS in my opinion. Right. Masino, yeah. Masino is a luthier in New York. Before you want to buy John Cruz Custom Shop Fender Strat, check out Masino, Mashino. He makes amazing Fender style guitars, so check him out. Shout out to Masino. Where are we? Iggy says with CNC there's no reason not to. CNC can be great, a great thing. So not opposed to that at all. Moonlight Drive says top quality rosewood is just not available. That's true, and I think mahogany is the same. What's happening now with rosewood, especially Brazilian rosewood, is they can only take the wood from the stumps, the tree stumps, and that's what's going to these exotic wood dealers, is wood from the tree stump and not actually from, you know, the normal part of the tree. Iggy says Colchester has a very old castle. It does indeed, and it goes all the way back to the Roman times, and I think even before then it was a pagan temple. So it's very old castle. It's a Norman keep now. Its last incarnation was from the Normans. You know. Apparently, Duesenberg made a vibrato that can be retrofitted without damage to the guitar. WS, thank you for that. Taxman and Paperback Writer were both recorded on solid state amps. Okay, interesting. I don't know about that. I don't know, but are you thinking the Vox solid state amps that came out in '67? Could it be that they were the ones? Sorry, there was a question up here that I was going to ask. Duesenberg, yeah. One slight question about Duesenberg vibrato units. They make a version of the Bixby, and it's horrible. The great thing about a Duesenberg is that you can string them properly, and they're easy to string, whereas a Bixby is a nightmare. It's a complete nightmare to put strings on. But a Bixby has a beautiful sort of feedback, travel. When I say feedback, I mean like when you press it down, you can really feel what it's doing. Duesenberg is all over the shop. It's really loose, and you just got to breathe on it, and it works. So maybe that was just, I tried out a Duesenberg Joe Walsh guitar, and I didn't like it at all. I thought it was rubbish, but other people love Duesenberg. Maybe I need to try out another Duesenberg model. But the Joe Walsh one I didn't care for at all. It was like a really long scale neck, huge neck, like an SG. And the vibrato unit wasn't good. I didn't like it. Okay, let's go down here. Okay, 7 Series Vox amps. So I was right. Thank you. That was sometimes I surprise myself. You know, sorry, that wasn't meant to be egotistical at all. One thing I'm going to do is a series of videos coming up. I'm not going to tell you about them just now, but the Vox thing is going to be all cleared up in this new video I'm making. So yeah. Correction, they were a hybrid amp, sort of like the Music Man, maybe a solid state preamp with a tube power amp. I always thought that was kind of weird with Music Man amps. Why have a solid state preamp but a power amp that was valve? Why not the other way? But there you go. Okay, I'm breaking up. Right, okay, it's got to 1 hour 30, guys. I'm going to do this next Sunday. We're going to have a Sunday Q&A every Sunday, as long as you guys like it. And, you know, maybe I'm going to do it a little bit later, so my American friends can join us. But it's been wonderful to have you guys. And, yeah, let's tune in next Sunday. And let's put the world to rights on the guitar. Yes, thank you. And thanks a million, guys, for keeping into the channel. And yeah, Moonlight Drive, man, you're the man. Thank you. So we've had people from America, all over America. We've had people from Canada. We've had people from New Zealand, and we've had somebody that knows about Colchester. That's amazing. And we've had people that know about Jimmy Page's house in Inverness or Scotland. So guys, have a great day, play some guitar, bend in tune, and concentrate on your right hand. And God bless, good luck, and see you on the road. Speak soon. Thanks, guys. Just got to work out how to turn this thing off now. Here we go.